Hello there. 150 subscribers is pretty cool, right? I mean, how far off am I from the big guys, really? Maybe I'll hit that when my grandchildren are on their deathbed. So, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for helping me get this far. I know we were supposed to do something else at a previous time, and I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those pesky personal life events. But seriously, thank you guys so much for the support you've given the channel. I have big plans for this channel in the future, and that can only be possible with your guys' support. So I promise to continue giving you guys the quality of videos y'all deserve and better. Anyways, on to this video subject. Movies. Movies are fun little things, aren't they? They can make you laugh, make you cry, turn you into a flamethrower wielding maniac, but that last category will be covered at a later time. Anyways, I have been a movie buff for years. I just appreciate the movie making process, from scripting to filming to editing. It's a hard process throughout, but it can be so rewarding, and so not that. Okay, fine, it's my last bad movie joke. Oh, look at that, my fingers are crossed. Despite what some people might say, I like to think I'm overall positive about movies, but I will admit when something has flaws and that will be represented in my scores. Even movies I give a 10 out of 10, it doesn't mean I have no problems with it just means the flaws I find are so minuscule compared to the positives that I don't really care. 10 out of 10 movies are movies that mean the most to me, but these movies mean the most to me, if that makes sense. So without further ado, the moment some of you have been waiting for, my top 20 movies of all time. For now. Also, I may be spoiling some of these movies, so yeah. Number 20. Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This is probably the objectively best film in the MCU, I just prefer a later film more. I like Cap in these movies, but this movie cemented Cap as being one of my favorite MCU characters. Taking a character whose views of good and evil were so black and white and putting him in a morally gray world and situation is such a genius and natural progression of Steve's character. Plus his arc with the Winter Soldier himself just pulls on your heartstrings so much. Even ignoring Cap's incredible arc in this movie, the espionage story is such a fascinating, compelling story for the MCU. This movie has some of the best hand-to-hand combat in the MCU alongside Shang-Chi. I'd argue characters like Fury and Natasha are at their best here, and much better than the projects that actually focus on them. Alexander Pierce is one of the most underrated villains in the MCU, and I will die on that hill. The cinematography is great, the music is great, this movie is just great, man. I'm not one to harp on the modern MCU like most people, but this movie is one of the examples of how great the Infinity Saga truly was. Number 19. Schindler's List. This little quirky thing where whenever I talk about this movie, 5 minutes later, I'm on the floor, curled up like a baby crying. Look, I love a lot of Spielberg's work. Jurassic Park, E.T., Tintin, etc., etc. But this is, without a shadow of a doubt, his magnum opus. I legitimately do not think I have a single issue with this movie. The directing can be so utterly haunting when it needs to be, and utterly somber when it needs to be. Spielberg pulls no punches showing the horrors of this tragedy, and it's more haunting than it is grotesque. The score by John Williams is on par with some of his best work for Star Wars. To say it's beautiful would be the understatement of the century. Each character is perfectly written and even better acted. Nothing will make me more angry at the Oscars than knowing Liam Neeson never got the Oscar he absolutely deserved for his performance as Schindler himself. Neeson delivers every emotion he needs to with such perfection, and it is as incredible of a performance as it is a tragic one. And Ralph Fiennes is equally as great as Amon Guth. This movie also has some of the most tragic dialogue I have ever heard in a movie. This movie's emotional climax is among one of the best scenes I've ever seen in a movie. You can tell Spielberg put blood, sweat, and tears into this movie, and it more than well paid off in this absolute masterclass of cinema. Number 18. No Country for Old Men. Somehow only the second best movie on the list with Josh Brolin and Javier Bardem in the cast. This movie is exceptional. Note that I've never read the book this movie is based on, and I probably never will, personally. The story is such a thrilling and gripping prey and predator tale, and the Coen brothers' direction only elevates it. The cinematography is incredible, the score is amazing, and all the characters are enthralling. Which leads me to, in my opinion, the best part of the movie, the performances. Tommy Lee Jones, Josh Brolin, and Woody Harrelson are some of the biggest standouts in the cast, but everyone here is frankly great, but even they are dwarfed by one of my favorite movie villains and acting performances ever. Javier Bardem as Anton Chigurh. This man is hauntingly excellent. He commands every scene he is in. I don't know what I can say about this character in this performance that hasn't already been said numerous times over the last 17 years. It is frankly chilling, and he 100% deserved that Oscar win. All in all, this movie is simply exceptional. Number 17. Independence Day. One of the most fun movies I've ever seen. This movie isn't complex or deep or anything like that, like the last two movies I've gone over, but what it lacks in complexity, it more than makes up for in sheer entertainment. It's got one of the best finale speeches I've ever seen in a movie. The main trio are all fun characters with great performances from Will Smith, Bill Pullman, and Jeff Goldblum. The action is just amazing to watch. There's actually some really good effects from this. It's got a lot of great jokes from the witty cast. The story is nothing game-changing, but it doesn't have to be. It just has to be entertaining, and it succeeds at that goal well. Also, the climax is somehow the coolest thing ever, while somehow managing to have some great emotions from it. It's not Schindler's List or anything, but it's got some decent emotions. This movie is just the perfect blockbuster action movie, meant to just sit back and watch cool guys killing aliens and having a pretty enjoyable story, and it excels at that. Number 16. Gojira. Yes, I think the original Gojira is the best Godzilla film. I am an incredibly original and handsome guy. Jokes aside, this movie is a masterclass in terms of monster movies. Because it's not quite a monster movie. It's a warning about nuclear disasters that uses a soon-to-become iconic movie monster as the representation of said possible disaster. And as you all know, it's excellent. This movie's effects still hold up quite well 70 years later. Godzilla's theme and the overall music are composed excellently by Kira Ufukubi. I definitely messed that up. Godzilla in this movie is one of the most threatening he's ever been. Serizawa in this movie might be my favorite human character in the entire franchise. He's an incredibly complex and emotional character who has a fantastic conclusion, defeating the monster with the weapon he feels guilty for possibly releasing into the world. No, this is not just Oppenheimer. The somber and tragic moments in this movie hit like a freight train, perfectly showing the damage and chaos Godzilla brought upon the city. This movie is just exceptional, man. The crowning jewel of kaiju movies and a classic for a reason. Also no, this is not a horror movie, stop saying it is. Number 15. Monsters, Inc. Pixar's second best movie. We'll get to number 1 eventually, don't you worry. Monsters, Inc. is kind of just the perfect animated movie. The animation still looks amazing even 20 plus years later. The score by Randy Newman is great and arguably one of Pixar's most iconic scores. It's paced out great, the jokes consistently land, Sully and Mike's dynamic is one of the best Pixar dynamics ever, especially helped by John Goodman and Billy Crystal's voice acting. Not to say that the voice acting isn't great overall, it's just that these two are the highlights. It's got some of the best Pixar villains with Waternoose and Randall. The story is consistently creative and fun to see play out. The world building especially shows how creative Pixar was back in the early days, but easily this movie's strongest aspect is its emotional core between Sully and Boo. The journey these two go on from Sully trying to get rid of Boo ASAP to Sully genuinely being distraught having to let Boo go back to her world is such powerful character development. And that ending, man, that ending hits so hard. Like, I shouldn't feel this bittersweet about hearing the word kitty, but I am, and I love this movie. I'm not gonna cry again. I'm not gonna cry again. Ah, screw it. Number 14. Star Wars. Only my second favorite Star Wars movie, so you can probably guess what number 1 is. And no, it is not this movie. This movie is incredibly overrated, and you can fight me on that. But still, Star Wars is cinema at its finest. I don't think I have to say that the effects look revolutionary for their time, but I'm gonna say it anyway. The effects look revolutionary for their time. John Williams' score is arguably cinema's most iconic soundtrack ever, and for good reason. It's not as godly as his score for other movies like these, but it's pure perfection still. The space battles look amazing, not so much the lightsaber duels, but it's the first, so I'll give it a pass because we have this masterpiece on YouTube. The beginning of Luke's journey from simple farm boy to galactic hero is just the perfect beginning to a hero's journey. Pretty much all of the characters in this movie are great. Vader's introduction in this movie is nothing short of iconic. Leia and Han are great characters. Ben Kenobi is the mentor figure of cinema, barring maybe Mr. Miyagi. And Grand Moff Tarkin, I'd argue, is one of Star Wars' more unappreciated villains. This man blew up a whole planet and didn't get ruined in the next 2 movies. This movie's pacing is kind of perfect. I never felt like a scene dragged out at all throughout this. And that dual sun scene still hits nearly 50 years later. This movie just screams iconic. From the effects, to the music, to the quotes, to everything else. If you haven't seen the original Star Wars, what are you doing with your life? Go watch it. After you finish this video, pretty please. Number 13. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Spoiler alert, this is only the first of two-part movie ties on the list. Let's just say Bill and Ted is my Back to the Future. Now look, the Back to the Future trilogy is iconic and great and all, but I just think the first two Bill and Ted movies are more fun. Quick side note, I have seen Face the Music and it was disappointingly mid. Back onto the peak movies now. These movies just have such a fun 80s, 90s vibe to them that make them such a blast to watch. Excellent Adventure is such a zany movie with two amazing protagonists. Bill and Ted themselves are lovable characters, and while their performances by Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves respectively aren't Oscar-worthy or anything, they still perfectly capture the roles they take. Also, Rufus is a fun character, and seeing the historical figures in modern times is funny. This movie is basically Mr. Peabody and Sherman 25 years before that movie came out. And while Bogus Journey isn't exactly the most objectively perfect movie or sequel to ever come out, it ups the wackiness of these movies to an incredibly enjoyable level. I absolutely adore these two's dynamic with death. It is so much fun to see play out. That battleship scene will never not be funny. Also, the evil robots call themselves Evil Bill and Ted, and that is incredibly funny. I don't care what you say. These movies broke my sense of humor. Overall, I recommend these movies a lot. They're not gonna blow your mind with thought-provoking cinema or anything, even though that hell scene, Bogus Journey, does have some pretty cool psychological questions in it. But for what they lack in objective cinematic quality, they make up for it by just being some fun movies to vibe to. Take a shot every time I said the word fun the last 5 minutes. You'll be dead by the time I said number 12, Hercules. My favorite Walt Disney movie ever, Eat Your Heart Out, Lion King. It was after watching this movie 2.5 times on a plane ride to and from Ireland, I realized this might be one of my favorite animated movies ever. I mean, you know a movie's fantastic if it handles the liar reveal and third act breakup tropes decently. I mean, this movie truly has it all. Fantastic soundtrack with some absolute bangers. Zero to Hero makes my soul ascend. The animation is still bright, colorful, and amazing even 27 years later. The story isn't the most original thing ever, it's kinda just Superman 78, but it still works. This is arguably one of, if not Disney's funniest and most quotable movie. I don't know, it's between this and Emperor's New Groove. This is probably my favorite cast of characters in any Disney movie. Hercules is a great protagonist who you feel for her struggle and journey throughout the movie. Meg is the best Disney love interest, I will not hear otherwise. Phil is voiced by Danny DeVito, so automatic 10 out of 10 character. Hades is the best Disney villain ever, I will go to war on this take. And all the side characters are just so fun and memorable. This movie is incredible, man. If you ever want a Disney movie to just vibe with, Hercules will give you that and more. And I know for a fact that the remake is going to ruin all this. What do you mean this is going to be told from Hades' perspective? Disney, I swear if you don't get Bob Odenkirk to play Hades, there will be riots! Number 11. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This is the last time on the list, I swear. I genuinely can't decide which of these movies is better. They're both just that incredible. I'd say Into has a slightly better plot to it, while Across is a better villain. But they're both absolutely fantastic pieces of cinema that if you haven't watched, I will hunt you down and strap you to a chair and make you watch a 4-hour cut of these movies. Or you can just watch them on your own time. Anyways, back to peak fiction. Into the Spider-Verse is really what made fans like myself fall in love with Miles Morales. He perfectly exemplifies what the saying, anyone can wear the mask, truly means. Despite what some idiots on the internet will tell you. The animation is revolutionary, the soundtrack is absolutely incredible, Miles and Peter B's dynamic will never not be amazing, its narrative themes are fantastic, What's Up Danger is one of the best movie scenes ever, it's just a perfect animated movie. And Across is just as good. It takes the themes of Into the Spider-Verse and expands on them beautifully. The amount of focus on Gwen in this movie makes her just as interesting and amazing of a character as Miles. The Spot is one of my favorite Spider-Man movie villains ever, and Miguel is the perfect foil for Miles, and for God's sake, people, he is an antagonist, not a villain. Stop treating him as both. Anyways, this movie takes the original's already stellar animation and kicks up to 12. The music is once again amazing. Spider-Man India is the greatest character to ever appear on the big screen, and you will not tell me otherwise. The action is amazing, the emotional moments hit like a freight train, and that ending. Oh, that ending! These movies are a sensational duology, and they would have to actively try to mess up Beyond the Spider-Verse. When whenever that is coming out.
Number 10, Dune Part 2.
Before you say it, no, this is not recency bias. This is genuine. I adore Dune Part 2. I already thought the first Dune was fantastic, but this movie just takes everything to new heights. Paul is easily one of my new favorite characters ever, and Timothy gives such an excellent performance. Give this man the Oscar he deserves. Austin Butler is completely unrecognizable as Fade Rotha, and I mean that in the most positive way ever. He's not in the movie much, but when he appears, he controls every scene he is in. The directing and cinematography is some of the best I have ever seen. Then he better win a directing Oscar. The action is excellent, the dialogue goes insanely hard, the effects look jaw-dropping, and the plot is engaging throughout. I don't care if you don't like long movies, you have to watch this movie. Unless you haven't seen the first one, which you should go do that because that movie is also incredible.
Number 9, The Batman.
DC is something I have an extreme love-hate relationship with. On the one hand, they've given us incredible movies like Superman 78 or the Lego Batman movie, some amazing shows like Superman Lois and the Penguin, and some really fun games like the Lego Batman games, and well, I only recently just started playing the Arkham series, but they have given us some garbage. Movies like Justice League and The Flash, shows like Titans, Batwoman, and Gotham Knights, games like Suicide Squad kill Rocksteady's reputation. They are the definition of a mixed bag. So it's safe to say my feelings going to the Batman were cautiously optimistic, and coming out of it, yeah, this might be the best thing DC's ever put out. I love every aspect of this movie. The engaging and thrilling murder mystery story, the chilling and fantastic music, the superb cinematography. Like, this movie looks amazing. The smart and complex writing, the great action scenes, especially that chase scene. Like, that is like top 10 movie scenes ever in my opinion. And of course, the incredible characters and their equally incredible performances. Robert Pattinson is my definitive Batman. Not quite Bruce Wayne, but absolutely my definitive Batman. I adore these versions of Gordon and Catwoman. The Penguin steals every scene he's in. Alfred's amazing in this movie, but it's Alfred, what do you expect? And Paul Dano's Riddler might be my favorite live-action Batman villain. Not the best, but my favorite. Overall, I love this version of Batman's world, and I am itching for that next movie.
Number 8, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
There are a few movies that have the same amount of wonder and whimsy that this movie does. Yeah, the pacing in the first act is a bit slow for my liking, but when this movie gets rolling, it's pretty much perfect. The sets look absolutely incredible and magical. All the participants in the tour are memorable in their own special way, some of them for not really good reasons. I hate Veruca with every fiber of my being. The musical numbers in this movie are rivaled by no other movie. They are something else. It's really funny, the ending is one of the most heartwarming things I've ever seen, no matter how many theories people make about how atrocious of a human being Willy might be. But I can't talk about this movie without mentioning Gene Wilder's exceptional performance as Willy Wonka himself. Every weird mannerism, every little joke he makes, every time Willy gets angry or goes insane, Wilder just perfects this character to a T, and it's just a testament to how much of an incredible actor Gene Wilder was. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory is okay, I guess, and I really enjoyed Wonka that came out recently, but neither of those movies hold a candle to the original 1971 classic.
Number 7, Diary of a Wimpy Kid Dog Days.
One of the best final chapters to a story ever. Yes, this is the last one. There is no fourth Wimpy Kid movie or animated Wimpy Kid movies. Do not believe the internet's lies. Anyways, this movie takes the best elements of the previous movies and brings them to their absolute peak. The jokes are consistently hilarious, the summer vibe makes it such a feel-good movie, the story is really fun to see play out, and actors like Steve Zahn and Devin Bossa give arguably their best performances here. And the arc between Greg and Frank growing closer together as father and son might be slightly better than the arc between Greg and Roderick from Roderick Rules where they grow closer as brothers. Just slightly though. And man, this movie's ending is just the perfect ending to the trilogy. It may not be the loaded diaper concert from the second film, but it's still fantastic. This movie perfectly exemplifies why I love perfect endings so much, because they can easily be the best parts of their stories. And this movie is certainly a perfect ending. At least it was for 5 years, but that's getting its own video, so moving on.
Number 6, Whiplash.
I legit think this movie is perfect. There is not one element of this movie that isn't perfection. The story is interesting and complex, the pacing is amazing, the cinematography is simple but effective. But this movie's strongest aspects are its character writing and acting. Miles Teller as Andrew is such an underrated performance. He portrays every emotion perfectly through all of his sadnesses, frustrations, and blow-ups. But even he is dwarfed by what I consider to be the greatest performance from any actor ever. J.K. Simmons as Terrence Fletcher. I have never seen a performance where one moment you can be laughing at his hilarious insults, and in the next moment be terrified as you see what he puts Andrew through. But he somehow never comes off as a cartoonishly evil villain based on what his ideology, or the theme of the movie, is, which I won't spoil, but it is such a universal message that can go for anyone. Like Meet the Robinsons. I almost don't want to say anything else about this movie. Going in blind is probably your best option for this absolute masterpiece of cinema.
Number 5. Toy Story.
A movie that is infinitely rewatchable for me. Even ignoring all the memes people have made about it.
Buzz-looking alien! Where? Ah!
It's still an amazing movie for Pixar to start out with, and I'd argue it's still their best. The animation still looks solid even nearly 30 years later. The music is so good. Woody's arc in this movie is well handled, and Buzz's realization scene still hits like a freight train. The jokes are really funny and even better when you turn them into memes. It's just everything you could want in a Pixar movie. I love all the sequels to this movie, and I love other Pixar movies like Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, Ratatouille, but this is probably never getting topped for my favorite movie of theirs. I mean, it was my favorite animated movie ever for a long time, until a certain movie surpassed it, but we'll get to that soon.
Number 4. Home Alone.
Yeah, my top 5 isn't quite the greatest of cinema, especially number 1. But it's my list, so objectively it is the best list ever, and anyone who says otherwise is objectively wrong. I know that saying that this is the Christmas movie is so blatantly obvious, but this is the Christmas movie. This movie has everything you want in a Christmas movie. The wholesome and feel-good vibe that gets you in the Christmas spirit. In terms of funny and quotable Christmas movies, it doesn't get better than this. The third act is so iconic for a reason, and god, the sequels try so hard to recreate it, but only Lost in New York even comes close. Kevin is like the best movie kid character ever. They managed to make his struggle real without coming off as him being unreasonable, or the family being cartoonishly bad so well. The Wet Bandits are just amazing and funny villains who have such phenomenal banter between them. And this movie has one of the best endings to a movie ever. You can fight me on that. If your heart and soul isn't at least slightly moved by the time the credits roll, you actually look like this. Now that it's near the Christmas season, I get to watch this movie every day for the season and never get tired of it. Oh, how I love the holiday season.
Number 3. The Empire Strikes Back.
Best Star Wars movie ever. Eat your heart out, prequel fans. I don't know what I can say about this movie that hasn't already been said a million times. It's not just one of the most beloved sequels of all time, it's one of the most beloved movies of all time. This does what every good sequel does. Takes the original and expands on it without being some cheap copy. The world building here is amazing, with each planet feeling different from the last. The space battles, and especially the lightsaber duels, are even better than last time. The effects look great, John Williams once again cooks with the soundtrack for this movie, and the story is just genius. Luke's development in this movie is amazing, and him losing at the end is just perfect for the next movie. I don't think I even need to comment on why I Am Your Father is like one of the best movie moments ever, and Yoda is one of the best Star Wars characters ever, and Peaceful OT Yoda is infinitely better than Clone Murderer PT Yoda. That's why Clone Wars is amazing. Yeah, the timeline is a bit confusing because apparently Luke gets trained on Dagobah for months when that doesn't really feel like the case at all with the Leia and Han plotline. But that's like my only issue with this movie. Overall, an absolutely sensational sequel that perfectly complements the original and was a great setup for Return of the Jedi. Just near perfection.
Number 2. Megamind.
Yeah, you probably knew this was gonna be on here. After recent tragic events, I revisited the original Megamind, and yeah, this is probably my favorite animated movie of all time. This movie is just excellent. The animation still holds up, this movie's soundtrack got me into AC/DC, and that's always awesome. The action is fun, this movie's infinitely quotable, and every joke lands. It's got some shockingly amazing emotional moments. They pull off the third act breakup trope well. They said it couldn't be done. The voice acting is great from everyone, especially Will Ferrell and my beloved J.K. Simmons. The story is such an interesting breakdown of the superhero genre and relationships and incels and themes of destiny and purpose. It's so good. Megamind is such an interesting and complex character, and he's really funny and charming. Titan isn't like a top-tier DreamWorks villain or anything, but he still works incredibly well for this movie's story. Roxanne and Minion are both amazing characters with great dynamics with the big blue head guy, and this movie has the best memes. I mean, come on, let's be real. Just an incredible movie that I'm so happy has gotten the respect it deserves. It's such an amazing solo movie with no sequel or TV show. Nope. And for my number one favorite movie of all time, who anyone who knows me should know the answer to because I never shut up about it.
Number 1. Avengers Endgame.
Let me explain.
Now, this isn't exactly the greatest, most perfect piece of cinema or anything. It's not Godfather or Space Odyssey. But it's the movie that's had the most impact on me personally in my 16 years on this floating space rock. It's the perfect movie for me. Yes, the music is excellent, and the fact Rise of Skywalker got nominated for an Oscar for Best Original Score and this didn't will never not boil my blood to no end. Yes, the action is amazing. Yes, the culmination of 11 years of movies is paid off perfectly here. But my favorite aspect of this movie is its masterful character work. And I'm even here to debunk some stupid stuff I've heard about this movie's character work. First off, I'll say it, Thor was well handled in this movie. I think his depression arc and learning to build himself back up was so well handled, and that scene with his mom is such a good scene. Hawkeye is, I'd argue, at his best here. He goes through a lot of the same development as Thor does, just much more violent. Widow is also at her best here, even though I really wish they had made her movie before, you know, she died. Hulk, I would say I like what they do with his character if I didn't know what would happen to him later on. I will defend Endgame Thanos till the day I die. MCU Thanos is probably my favorite villain of all time, and people just love to pretend Endgame ruined him. Like, no. He saw that even if his plan went through, there would still be beings that would still oppose him. So he would have to erase everyone who opposed him. That just makes sense? Sorry about the side tangent. I'm just so tired of hearing, oh, Endgame ruined Thanos. When no, it didn't. But easily the best characters of the movie are Tony and Steve. Steve gets a fantastic final movie with some fantastic payoffs for his character, like finally picking up Mjolnir and the one-man army walk. But it's Tony who really gets to be the star of the show. Seeing him feel responsible for Peter's death and how he copes with it is so well handled. And RDJ was robbed of a nomination for his role as Tony. Thank God he got an Oscar for Oppenheimer. How he developed from not only this movie's themes, but also the themes that he's been ridden with since pretty much the first Iron Man movie was incredible to see play out. His sacrifice at the end is just perfection, and the parallel, oh my god! Another aspect of this movie I love is how everyone reacts differently to the snap. How Bruce reacts is different from how Scott reacts, which is different from how Tony reacts, which is different from how Thor reacts. You get the picture. And I'm gonna say it, the portal scene is my favorite movie scene of all time. There, I said it. Just the absolute perfect culmination of everything the MCU has built up to. This movie's just phenomenal, man. I know people are gonna roll their eyes and just say, boo, Marvel Glazer.
Do it. See how I react.
But this is, and probably will forever be, my favorite movie of all time. I love it 3000.
I had to do it at least once. So that's my list. Once again, I can't thank you guys enough for the support you've given the channel. I almost don't feel worthy of the attention I've gotten, if that makes sense. I promise to pump out more mediocre content, but for now, this is me signing out. God, I just did a normal YouTuber outro. Have I contracted a disease?